guys, I'm Rori, and you are listening to Rori's Room, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything life throws at us. Welcome to Season 3, More Than Just a Job. I am sitting down with creatives and professionals who are chasing and shaping the work that they have always wanted to do. This season is all about sharing different perspectives from different fields and revealing just how those paths might have changed them along the way. This week, we're sitting down with author Samantha Shafay Webb, who published her first book, Alone, a teen fiction, in the fall of 2021. Without further ado, let's meet Samantha. How are you doing, Samantha?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Before we dive in, I like to start with a little segment we call Weekly Favorites, which is a little segment about how we get into talking here. And since you are an author, I thought it would only be right to recommend some books this week. So if you have a book in mind, why don't you go ahead and introduce that first?
Okay, so I thought about this because actually in the more recent years, I haven't been reading, but I have started a book and I thought I'd give this one a recommendation, especially so if you like Harry Potter, this is the book for you. It's called The Dread Descendant by Lauren Kate. I think her last name is Lee. And it's not exactly Harry Potter, but it definitely gives like the whole theme, creating the universe. And it gives the main character gives a whole like interesting perception. And I really like how it's going so far. I haven't finished it, but I recommend it because of only how it was written by her, and I am definitely a huge fan and can't wait to finish it myself.
I don't think I've actually heard of that author.
Actually, I heard of it through through Instagram, how it gives you suggestions of books if you follow books. And so she started popping up over time, and I told myself the last year that I would give it a try. And I fell in love the first few chapters.
I don't think I've actually heard of the author, but I know that Instagram is really, really good for giving recommendations like that kind of stuff. One thing that I've been seeing a lot of lately is music recommendations on Instagram. So I usually add all of them on my Spotify. So my songs is a literal mess right now. But I feel just finding that art and art that you wouldn't usually find elsewhere is just super beneficial to Instagram.
I agree with you, yes.
The book that I have to recommend is no shock to the listeners if they have listened to any other episode in this season, because I'm a big advocate for this series. Even though there is I've heard that there's a little controversy in it. I don't know. With authors and stuff, and yeah. I'm not really sure, but I definitely recommend it if you enjoy fairy fantasy. It's not like Lord of the Rings. I mean, kind of, but it's a little different. And when you start reading it, you'll see. But have you heard of A Court of Thorns and Roses?
It sounds familiar, but I never actually looked into it. I might have to do that as my next read.
I highly recommend it. It is a 5-book series so far, but she just released the upcoming dates for the 6th and 7th book, which is coming out in this fall and next January, which I'm super, super excited for. I'm pretty sure these have been out for a really long time too, so these must have been in the works for a while. My best friend, Jordan, shout out Jordan, love you so much, had been urging me to dive into this for years, and I hadn't read it, so she finally got it for me for my birthday, and I devoured the first 3 books in nearly 2 weeks, and then finals season came along, and I didn't touch them again for 2 years, which is insane. And then at the beginning of this year, I started a New Year's resolution where I was going to read my height. So 5 feet 6 inches in books. So that has been a journey, especially since we started playing Stardew Valley lately. I don't know if you played Stardew Valley, but
no, I haven't.
It's like Animal Crossing kind of Minecraft. So it's really addictive. So I've been playing a lot of that lately and it's kind of been setting me back. But yeah, I mean, I finished this season, or not this season. I started again this year reading this series, and I read the first 3 books and then finished the last 2, and I was absolutely ripped apart in the last one. I was literally ugly crying. Such a good book, but it was definitely one of my favorite ones because the main character that they focus on in that book is named Nesta, and I seriously relate to her character so much. It's just so good. I can always rave about that series and that book and that character for sure.
It's definitely a good series when you're starting to read it and you emotionally grow attached to the character, the setting where everything takes place, and then once you finish it, you're like, okay, what's next?
The best part about Sarah J. Maas's, I'm not sure, her books, I'm pretty sure she's got like so many books just set in the same universe. Like the A Court of Thorns and Roses books, there's 7 of them coming out at the end of this year. And then she has like Crescent City, and that's a series of books. And then she has another series where it's all set in the same universe, but they're not with the same characters. Right. So like mourning the loss of those characters is hard, especially when you relate to them so long. And I mean, it's so good. I also just started annotating, and I actually really enjoy it. I wasn't sure if I would, because like I feel like to a certain extent, if you're like stopping yourself from being immersed in a book, it doesn't hit as good.
Yeah.
So like every so often you have to like uncap your marker and like highlight favorite parts or bookmark and stuff. But I actually found it to be really beneficial to my reading experience, because one, I can go back and reread and see where my head was at, because I'm a big rereader.
Yes.
So I like to see where my head was at during my first read, and also I can pull out the chapters whenever I want to show someone something, and then I can also find my favorite parts really easily. As you can see with this book, I've got little tabs here. I also like to like highlight like really important stuff to the character development and stuff like that. So that way you can kind of like pull details from, and it's especially beneficial to pulling details for a podcast. So it worked out really good. But yeah, I highly recommend this book. So if once you finish this book that you're reading now, I highly recommend you read these. However, it is a 5-part series, and so it's like a little expensive if you want to like buy them all at once. So like if you have a library that has them, maybe try that first.
I have only lived in Buffalo for about actually 3.5 years. I grew up in Albany, New York, the capital. So I would say about 3.5 hours from New York City. And I would say there's a different contrast between the city and kind of the rest of the state. So I'm more like suburbs, more like, not say mountains, but like more places where you can hike. There's like more space, there's farms in certain areas, regions of New York. But I'd say where I grew up helped create like the sceneries of the scenes that I wrote. And by having that opportunity to visit New York City and where I live, kind of created an aspect of places like I said, I created in the book, and also just things that you might not see in different states, like certain food places, certain restaurants, or maybe there's like certain things that maybe New York that maybe you haven't heard of in a different state or wherever you would live.
The environment that you grew up in really shapes your creative voice, because like in childhood development, I feel like it's a very important phase of your life where you kind of just collect things. And so in writing, I feel like even I still touch on it in my writing, is where you learn jargon and like places that you can think of right away when you think of the word restaurant and stuff like that. So it's like, I feel like I can't remember what show it was or what book it was, but there was this one author who was writing about a book that took place like across the country. And it was Lauren Oliver in her newest book, I think, where she was talking about something that was taking place in like the southeast part of the United States, but I'm pretty sure she's from New York. So she said something where it was like a New York jargon that wouldn't be used on another side of the country. And it wasn't really caught by a lot of people, but some people caught it and they were like, New Yorker, you know? Like, so I think that like a lot of times, even when you're trying to do it, like it kind of just like cements itself into your creative style, you know?
Yeah, I have to agree. Not necessarily like this story, a little bit of like Alone. But I feel like because some of it took place in Florida, I've only been in like certain parts of Florida, so I only wrote of places I knew, because knowing that I would want to make sure that like I didn't like change something so completely different where someone who's from Florida would say, wait, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing about like writing like realistic stuff. It's like, I think that's another reason why I like writing dystopian novels, is because like obviously you have to keep it realistic to a certain extent, but you have more flexibility in like creating your own world and like world building. But that also means like putting more into creating your world building. It's a whole process, as you've learned, but like I know it can be really hard. Like even on like fan fiction, people are like critiquing your work, like
everything you do.
Yeah. I would go on. I still go on there, and I still see like notifications sometimes. I had a Draco Malfoy one, and it's like popping off still. It's like 500,000 reads, and I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my god, people are still reading this. I wrote it in like my preteen years. Like, I was obviously very young, and I didn't know a lot of like how to write very well. So like people are out in there critiquing your work, which I also think is a really good thing about Wattpad, is because it does help you become a better writer.
It does.
But they can be brutal. Do you have a specific teacher that helped you more with your writing, or any specific person that kind of hyped you up as you were growing up?
So I actually had one of my friends at the time in high school was also a writer. She had a different like genre that she was writing, but she told me about Wattpad, and she asked me to like, take a look at it because she knew that I was a writer and I loved reading. I kind of like, after reading her story, I thought like, oh, this is cool. You can see like readers from literally anywhere commenting or asking a question about like that chapter. And I asked her more about like the writing process on there, and I decided to give it a try.
That's kind of how I ended up on it. I think I originally started reading fan fiction just because like, I don't know how I came across it, but I know I would spend hours a day just like consuming all of this content, just because like that was really like the first time I read outside of class, like, like books that are required for the curriculum. And I would, even during like free reading time in like study halls and stuff, I would be like, I would convince my teachers to let me read on my phone so I could read this. I could not start a new one without finishing one. I started reading. I don't know if you had the same experience.
Definitely the same experience, especially in high school, where especially if it's an active story and it's not completed yet, so you're waiting for the next chapter, and so then you're just in class just trying to not like be emotional, trying to keep a straight
I had
face.
a love-hate relationship with the not completed stories, because there were people who were on it, like weekly updates, like
every Thursday or something.
Exactly. I tried to be like that, but it was hard. But then there were people that it was a gamble starting a story that wasn't completed, because it was either you get to the end of the story and you want more but you don't have it, or, and like they usually update on like a regular basis, or they haven't updated it in 5 years, so you get to the end of the book and then it's like cliffhanger, never again.
All right, guess a new story. But I think I would say at the time, I definitely read a few stories at a time. So not unless I had something, if I was waiting for the other one to come out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was too. I feel like a lot of like fan fictions and stuff kind of like blend in with each other too. So I guess it made the transition a little smoother, but it was still rough for sure. So as a kid, were you more drawn to storytelling and creative hobbies, or do you think that you gravitated towards more science and academic fields early on?
Surprisingly, I was both. I guess I kind of went back and forth of more being creative, wanting to use my imagination. But then I also found like the fascination of science. So just like that's what brought me towards my career, and just kind of finding, I guess I was curious, I would say.
Your novel follows your character Claire, also a student graduating high school early and trying to figure out her path. Do you think that your story kind of influenced hers, or do you think it was kind of vice versa, or both?
Definitely my interest in career path influenced Claire for the story. I won't say what exactly she ends up doing or deciding, but it definitely has a big influence.
Yes, definitely keep that spoiler for people who are looking to read it. If you want to figure out the end, check out Alone. Buy it. I think it's on Amazon, and is it just on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon currently, yes.
And you have a bonus chapter, right?
It's, yes, on Amazon as well, so you kind of get like another, actually it's that bonus chapter, I just realized it does take place like at some point in the book, but like it doesn't spoil anything. So
amazing. It was also really nice reading this and then like kind of like going back to like where I was like so many years ago when I first read it. It was like a completely different book, but then there were so many different parts in the book where I was like, oh, I remember this, you know?
you're like, I remember this scene. I tried my best to like keep like those certain like important scenes, but then also like I wrote around it as well.
Right. When you began writing it, do you think, or did you already know where Claire's story would go, or did it kind of evolve with you as you wrote it?
Somewhat of an idea. It wasn't like I was gonna stick with it, because sometimes as an author, you're just writing, and then by the time you get to the end, you actually want a different ending for them. There's 3 books, but I would say it's definitely like I know what's gonna happen, but I don't know how it's gonna exactly get there, because there'll be like new content versus when I was in high school, I kind of just wrote it.
That was kind of like my experience too. Like I definitely know what you mean by not knowing how it's gonna end. I wrote mine in, I think it was like, I want to say 2013, but it could have been 2015 when I was 13. I'm not really sure. But I remember finishing it around like 2015, 2016. And I wrote an ending that was like super happy, like happy ever after. And it was in the Harry Potter universe. Like, when is that a thing? And so I was like, I went back 2 years later and I was reading it and I was like, this is gross. Like, this is like, not gross, but like, this is not realistic and this is like really cushy and I didn't need to change it. So I spent like 2 days fully reconstructing the ending, killing off a bunch of characters, spoiler, but like literally like shattering hearts. And then people would come back and be like, oh my God, it doesn't have a happy ending. So I was like in like my emo phase there. I was like, this is real. Like, life doesn't have a happy ending sometimes. Like, I think that's really got me into like dystopian writing. Because I shifted from like happy ever after to like more realistic, more dystopian genres. And it was kind of funny going into those comments and seeing people like, I got one death threat one time because they were like, why did you kill my favorite character? I was like, oh my God, it's not that serious. But like at the same time, it is to like a lot of the readers, because like you said, people get really invested in these series.
Or they go back to it years later and they're like, wait a second.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, like I didn't realize it was that deep for people. But that was one of my first like realizations where I'm like, okay, people really take this seriously.
I would say, yeah, one of the realizations when I was taking my writing seriously on Wattpad, because I just thought, I'm posting for myself. I'm just posting. We'll see who will read it. Like, readers actually like really get into it and just like commenting like, when is the next chapter going to be out? Or how can so-and-so do this to her or him? Or why did you write it this way? Or can't spoil the first book, but when is the next book? Which, by the way, I'm so sorry to anyone listening to this and have been waiting for the second book for quite a few years, because this came out in 2021. And I think you'll understand why everyone's wondering, why did you wait so long?
I feel like you also got to think of like the creative process too. Like, it's been a long time since you wrote it, 5 years. A lot has gone on, not only in your life, but also in like your creative storytelling aspects, you know, like I'm excited to see your writing style, because like how that has changed in editing processes, because I am very familiar with writing styles changing over the years, you know, getting better with writing. And I also have some questions about like how your story has impacted you as a writer, but we will get to that. I just think there's so much that goes into it, and I'm just really excited to see what you've got. So moving into the publishing stage, I'm very curious, and I'm very curious to share this too, because as a writer who also began on Wattpad, I'm especially inspired by your journey from online writing to publishing. And I think it's really inspiring to people who also began on platforms like Wattpad, because they can see that it actually is possible to become not only just an online writer, but a published author as well. So if you could go into detail, what was that publishing experience like for you as a young writer?
So I would say, with the original story of Alone, it has been out for, I would say, a few years, where it was like getting the attention of the readers and anyone who found it. And it wasn't until I think my beginning of undergrad, so college, so it's been at least like 3 or 4 years later, where someone reached out to me through like messages asking me like, hey, are you interested in publishing your book? And at the time, you know, being in college, you're kind of like going through school and also trying to figure out like, oh, someone wants to actually publish me. And that process, it's interesting. So I did agree. I met with them through Skype, having a talk with the agent and the agency that like I went through at the time. And when they did like the first read through of the story, so the original story, it wasn't like fully developed. And so then they told me like things that like I could work on first, and that like I would have to like not rewrite the story, but like kind of make it fuller. Like as like a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, you're just writing and things are rushed, versus like in order to publish a book, you kind of need like the fluff, you need the character development of each character, kind of make everyone like different, like, you know, have their own like story to tell. And so after being told like suggestions of what to do with that book, I did have to take about a year or two to kind of like rework that while I was in school. And with, you know, 2019, COVID happened. So then a lot more time has passed by, and that did give me more opportunity to work on the book more during the COVID time. Shortly after, I reached out to the agency to let them know that I had completed the story and tried to fix the suggestions that they had made. And with that reread, they approved of it. And with the approval of that story, there's like a guideline, a set time of how everything would work. When would I work with my editor, meeting the editor, and all of this was because like they were based, I believe, in Nevada. So everything I did was either through Skype, through Zoom, or through email. So I think it was just one day, randomly, after finishing a class over the summer, I believe it was organic chemistry too. I have to remember that one. I remember getting that email that they said they have the set date of when they would like to release my book. And because the editor has now like finished the prior editing of another book, it was my turn to like start working with her of editing. And with that editing process, I would say I'm very glad that it happened over the summer, because it was definitely intense. So we worked chapter by chapter, going back and forth by email, trying to like make sure, like, you know, fixing grammar or making sure that's exactly how I wanted like that dialogue to be. And after, I would say we did the editing in about 8 weeks, so about 2 months, almost the entire summer, right before I started classes. And then once that was good, they kind of sent me that final draft to look everything through. That's the time period where they asked for like a bonus chapter. So that's the bonus chapter you'll see on Amazon. Then they gave me the kind of like the promotion post for Wattpad. So with that, I did have to take down majority of the first book on Wattpad because of like publishing rights and making sure it's not like in 2 places. And so I think I had the first 8 chapters on Wattpad. And with that, I kind of promoted the book, made posts on there. I remember I asked, it was kind of difficult with the readers at the time because this is so many years later, asking kind of like, what kind of like cover would you like for the story? So the cover of the story of Alone is actually voted by the fellow readers of Wattpad, actually, which I think
that's amazing.
Cool.
Did you end up making the cover yourself, or did they end up making that?
So they end up making it, and with that, they asked me, what are you looking for in a cover? Like, what kind of theme are you going for? What do you want to be included in it? And so I said, I want something with like flowers, pink flowers specifically. So you see pink flowers on the cover title. And I'm kind of like, yes, I'm kind of like working on towards, like, you kind of understand like the theme when you read the book of like kind of like why that's the cover. It's like, for example, for like the sequel, there's gonna be like the cover and you're like, okay, what is the meaning of this cover? So like it's gonna have you thinking, why is it that way?
One thing I really like about books and that I kind of started incorporating into my own writing is like, I used to create the title before writing the book and kind of just sticking with it. And I did it with my most recent book too, but instead of just like the first book I ever wrote, I think I deleted it off like socials like immediately, almost after posting, because it was just like, I was kind of embarrassed. But that's like with like, I didn't think it was good enough, and that's kind of like comparison culture. I wish I didn't, because it was actually pretty good. I really used to just kind of name my books like some cheesy title like A Sunset Romance or something like that. But then now I've kind of started titling my books like, if I come up with a title before I start writing the book, it has to be meaningful to the text, like the last line in the book. Or I really like when authors will like pull the title and like put it in like a sentence in the middle of your book. I'm like,
Somewhere.
oh my God, they did it! Like they did it! But yeah, I like to make the title something that like makes sense, but like makes sense more once you read the book. Yeah, and has that significant meaning in the text.
I would have to say, Let Alone, the sequel, the second book, memorable. I would say, like, you're probably wondering, like, what does she mean by memorable? Like making memories, or what is she doing? But it will like make way more sense once you get to the ending.
I remember like all the craze around that when it was on Wattpad. I think that's what originally brought me to it, because I was reading similar stories and then I saw all the hype behind this one. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to read it. And I was not disappointed. It was so good. And like the group that you had following your work was really inspiring too. And that actually leads me in my next question. Let me think how to say this. Were there any writers that you remember their username and stuff that really inspired you to either continue creating, start creating, or kind of just maintain your work?
I would have to say like some of like the big writers, like Anna Todd. I don't know if you've like read some of her books, but I found it kind of like reassuring when I saw that like she started off on Wattpad as an author herself, originally was a fanfic herself, and then basically transformed it in publishing. And so that kind of gave me hope and kind of inspired me to continue writing, and that there is the possibility that it can happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of authors' stories are kind of go unknown. You know, like you see all these big authors, but you never hear about how they got there because they've been published for so long.
Yes.
I think it's really especially important to emphasize these perspectives from young writers, especially young writers who started in like digital native platforms like Wattpad, because nowadays that's how a lot of authors start out. Of course, there's going to be writing that you do offline, but I think platforms like Wattpad really do kind of make things feel real, you know? That's where I kind of started taking myself seriously.
Yes. Like, I feel like it definitely becomes more real, and just having those readers around the world kind of getting that attention, it gets also people talking or thinking about it, and it just like it grows from there.
Exactly. What did that first publishing experience, all this experience during the summer and doing it during your college years, what did that teach you about the writing industry?
Let's say that, well, first, you don't want to ever like necessarily copyright another author, which was also like a big thing of like kind of being nervous about posting something online. But it was reassuring that like they had the genre of fan fiction. You could write any genre that you wanted. So like you had communities where it wasn't like treated necessarily as like that genre. Like people were reading it to read it because they were like interested in maybe like some theme or like just certain something that they're looking for in a book. And writing through high school was definitely different through my undergrad. High school was more, it became a hobby. I was bored over the summer. I liked posting chapters like a few times a week because that was like the main thing I did. Versus college, I shifted more to, hey, I would like this to be an actual published book, and someone has reached out to me. And at the time, it became kind of like a hobby, but still not writing as often because with school and life, it does get busy. So it became more like want to still do this. I'm still pursuing my career, but you can still pursue a hobby at a time. Always making time for yourself is important.
I think that's a good lesson, especially as someone who favors both science and writing. I feel like often they're kind of like split into like you're either this person or this person.
Right.
So balance is definitely key in that relationship. I've always been like an English art person, and I think I also, for that reason, I also kind of feel like I always kind of consider that you were either one person or the other. So it's interesting learning more about people who can find that balance in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
I can only imagine how stressful that would have been, like publishing during the school year. In college.
That was a very stressful time of my life. So I was a sophomore, junior in college, probably like the most important time because you're deciding like, oh, where are we going to pursue like a doctorate, a master's or something. I was also working part-time during the school year, full-time during the summer. And I was also a student athlete. So as a student athlete, you're also a full-time student athlete. So for undergrad, for me, was no sleep. No sleep. What was sleep?
Girl, that's me right now. My undergrad.
But I would say because of how stressful, like being a person in STEM, but also wanting to write, but also working and being an athlete on top of everything, my caffeine tolerance now is I can drink an Alani or a Celsius and go to sleep in 5 minutes now. I feel like that's how undergrad went for me because of how everything went.
Rory's Room is written and produced by myself, Rori Nicole, and you can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. Theme songs and background music were produced by TJ Borkenhagen. You can follow Rory's Room on Instagram at Rory's Room, and follow me at itsrory_x for updates on the show and a few more glimpses into life behind the mic. If you enjoyed today's episode, drop a review wherever you listened in. The goal of this show is to share my story and the stories of others in a way that makes people feel a little less alone. The next episode will be out July 19th, 2026, where we will be wrapping up our conversation with novelist and professor Holly Wilson. Tune in the following week, July 26th, for the final part of Samantha's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next time in Rory's Room.